be mindful of our friends in Florida this morning. Becky went, this is so cruel for me to laugh at this, but it's her birthday yesterday, so she wanted to go see the kids. So she went to see the kids, and she texted me this morning, and the pipes are frozen at the church in Brandon. They don't have any water. So it's like you go to Florida to escape this, and then it follows you down there, and it's like, there's just nothing you can do. Anyway, I think it's funny. Okay. Ben, would you mind starting us off in a prayer, please? Amen. Okay, so we're gonna, this class right now is gonna be as if we're just having the conversation that went on Wednesday. We're just gonna keep the conversation going. So I'll give you the real fast recap, and then if you want to open up your Bibles to Isaiah 46, that'll be the first place that we read from. Isaiah 46. I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this first part because this should have been covered last Wednesday. So we're just going to recap, open it up for questions, comments, put some disclaimers out there, and then we're going to move on right forward into, okay, but this is a problem of evil class, and so let's talk about that. So the recap is, the question is, what does God know? And there's two polar extremes. One is going to be called hard determinism. And the hard determinism is God knows every single little thing, our thoughts and our intentions, even before we were created. There is a road and it has been plotted out, and that's the thing, and God knows everything, and nothing is deviating from that plan. God knows every single little thing. That's determinism on this side. On the other side of that, there is open theism, which is, the key word for open theism is, well, the future is open. One of the key words that comes with this one is branching. And so it's like, if I go left, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. If I go right, this could happen, this could happen, this could happen. And it's just like this big, giant branching tree of open future that could be any of those things. And so I made a suggestion to you. There was, at the end of the 1500s, a priest named Luis de Molina. Luis de Molina. I tried when I'm driving, I try to say it fast and I can't say it fast. Try it like Luis de, I can't do it. There's too many different sounds in there. But Luis Molina said, I'm glad you appreciate my struggles in life. Molina is a guy who says, okay, we got two things that are true here. Within determinism, God absolutely has a plan. Let's look at the passages. We'll kill two birds with one stone as we go. Isaiah 46, verses 9 and 10. Last time we gave some examples for the idea of determinism, that God has a plan. We talked about foreknowledge and predictive prophecy. God says, this is going to happen in the future. Everything surrounding Jesus is the biggest one of those, in my opinion. He's going to be born from a virgin. He's going to be born in Bethlehem. He's going to live a perfect life. He's going to be descended from Judah. All of this stuff points to God having a plan. Isaiah 46, 9 and 10 is I would call this like it's not a linchpin verse, it's just the verse that says it very clearly. Isaiah 46, let's start in verse 8. Remember this and stand firm, recall it to mind, you transgressors, remember the former things of old. For I am God and there is no other. I am God and there is none like me. Okay, what does it mean to be God? Verse 10. Declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will accomplish all my purpose. I don't think it's controversial. Like, it should not, I'm trying not to make it uncomfortable for you to make a comment to disagree, because you're welcome to do that. But I don't think it's controversial, should not be controversial for us to say, God has a plan, and he's working a plan. Like, that seems pretty clear, right? It doesn't mean, so Mark's going to be like, not really Mark, somebody's going to be like, you're a Calvinist. Hey, it's not the same thing to say that God has a plan and he's working a plan. That's very scriptural. You can look through the scripture and you can see that very plainly. That's the determinism side. The other side, though, is this is the key for Molinism. And I don't care if you don't want to call it Molinism. When I sit and Becky and I talk about this a lot, not only this subject, but our Bible classes and what we're doing. Becky says, I think she's comfortable with me be telling you this. Becky says, even if I accept the thing that you're putting out there as an explanation for the nature of God, I hate it when you call it a name. Like when you say, she said, I'm not a Molinist, I'm a Christian. Fine, just forget that I call it Molinism. This thing's been around since the 1500s, and it's nice to not be ignorant of history. So the key that separates Molinism from, I think, every other perspective is, okay, God is working a plan, but this is the key. Write this down in your notes because this one is the key. Even though God is working a plan, I still have free will and I am responsible for my choices. That's the key. If you want to star it, circle it, highlight the thing, yes, God is working a plan, but I have the ability to choose and I'm going to be held responsible for the choices that I make on Judgment Day. That's the thing that Molinism is trying to combine. How do these two things work together? I got some passages here for you. Genesis 50 and verse 20. Genesis 50 and verse 20. When Joseph's brothers sold him into Egypt and Jacob died, and the brothers were like, oh no, he's going to come after us now that our dad is dead. Joseph said one of the most famous lines in his story, Genesis 50 and verse 20. He said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. That's a perfect passage for this conversation, because God was working a plan, and he knew that this plan was going to end in the way that he wanted it to end, but the brothers did not consciously recognize that they were a part of the plan. They meant to do something evil and harmful to their brother. And so it's like, you're responsible for that choice that you made, but still God made it for good. You put two things together in one package. I'm stopping here. Are we good with that?
I think the thing that you tend to assume is that, I don't know how to say this, but maybe God's part was keeping the brothers from killing Joseph, as opposed to putting Joseph in the pit.
I don't think so, and here's the reason why. In Genesis 15, God tells Abraham, I'm going to give you this land, but in 430 years. And before I give you this land in 400 years, you're going to go to Egypt, and you're going to be slaves, and then you're going to come up out of Egypt, and then you're going to conquer the land, and then I'm going to give you the land. And it's like, God knew they were going to Egypt, and Joseph was the way they went there. Does that follow what I'm saying?
I don't know that it separates from what I said.
Like how God actively made the thing work? Yeah.
The New Testament version of that, and I think Jake Smith made the point on Wednesday, Romans 8:28, we know that God causes all things to work together for good, for those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. So whatever that thing is, he's working for what he wants.
Yeah. Yeah. So I won't. Here's the definition for Molinism again. I had this on the board. I'll give it to you if you want it, but I'm going to read it. What does God know? This is your definition. He knows what morally free creatures would do in any hypothetical situation or set of circumstances. God knows all possible worlds. He sees the branches of the tree. If I do this, then this will happen. If I do this, then this will happen. He knows all things. And I think about it like chess. He has placed Jesus and Nebuchadnezzar and Judas and Peter on the timeline of his creation. They still have free will, but they are in the spot that they are in because they are a part of God's plan. Doesn't take away our responsibility. Now, let me throw this out there to you. I'm gonna pull on Eric here real quick, and not to pick, but Eric's not buying what I'm selling because he says, well, if still there is a plan and God's working a plan and I'm on this plan, then I don't have genuine free will. That is true and a real objection. You can do that. Really. It's very important. I'm not picking on your objection here. What I'm doing is opening the door to say, if you're going to sit here and you're going to say, I'm not going the Molinist route, great. Like you're not denying the deity of Christ. I'm just trying to give you an option. I'm just trying to explain how I understand God, and maybe you will say, I don't think so. Okay. Like really, that's okay.
I was going to say, throw out the yardstick explanation you did at the end of class. That explains it to me. That clip would be that yardstick explanation.
The what explanation?
The yardstick. The yardstick. The yardstick.
Oh, the yardstick. Yeah, I heard dark something, and I was like,
Say that again.
yeah. The yardstick is, imagine creation as a yardstick. God made all things over here on one end. The end of the world is over here on the other end. And the key is God, hey, James is here. Welcome, James. God is outside of time, looking down at the yardstick, and he sees everything that ever has been, but he also sees what has not yet been. He can see the whole picture all together in one place. And so we're somewhere on the yardstick, but God sees the whole thing. And so that's the yardstick illustration. Okay, I've spent too much time on that, but let me stop here. Oh, one more thing. Paula sent me a great text last week from our daily Bible reading, which I told you, I think about this every single day almost. And it's like, hey, there it is. Like, there's the thing. In our daily Bible reading, Jesus said to Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. What does he say? But I told him no. And all of this. Like, Jesus knows what's going to happen. There is this behind-the-scenes stuff going on. And here's this plan. But Peter doesn't know any of it. He's a part of the plan, but he doesn't know he's a part of the plan. And it fits right perfectly into this whole conversation. And it's true for me too. Like there's this thing going on. To Ryan's point, you said comforting, and I was shooting back just a little bit, but my biggest takeaway from Molinism is a deep sense of comfort to say, okay, bad things are going to happen to me, bad things are going to happen in this world, but I'm going to lay my head on my pillow at night because maybe the yardstick doesn't work out in my lifetime, or in my life, but I know that God's got the yardstick under control. And it's like, I'm fine with that. All right, I'm done with that. I'll give you the last word or any conversation about that. Oh, yeah.
Going back to Romans 8, when Jay said it, all things work together for good. The next couple verses explains that whole idea, for whom he foreknew, that yardstick. I knew you before you even were here. And also predestined. What it talks about there is, I set in motion the things that are going to help you become what you need to be conformed to the image of his son. So that's the end goal. I'm going to put the pieces together in front of you so that you can put the pieces together. That's the predestination that I was talking about. That's the yardstick, if you will.
Yeah.
That I knew you when Christ was dying. I knew you. I put that in motion so that everything that you can have in your life, you have the pieces predestined to become the image of my son.
And it does that, what you described, in no way takes away my responsibility in the situation. You have to balance the plan with responsibility. Find some way to balance those two things. You have to find some way to balance those two things. Whether you call it Molinism or not, you have to do it. You have to balance the plan with my free will and responsibility. So, yeah, Rob, last one on this.
And so, we got three things to say, but they're all going to be kind of quick. I think I bristle a little bit when somebody from denominationalism trying to have spiritual study, they'll look at me and go, oh, God has a plan for you. And I don't think I agree with what they mean. My response is usually, yes, he does have a plan for me, and it's right here in his word. That's God's plan for me, right here in his word. And if I look at that generally, then I think that's true. But I don't think that's what they mean. They're meaning kind of something that I think Eric's getting at here, that God has specific things that I'm going to do, and therefore I don't have a say in those things. I don't have free will, and I don't agree with that.
Can I stop on that one and comment, and then you can go on?
Sure.
When people ask that, and they ask it a lot, how do I know what God's plan for my life is? What am I supposed to do? My answer is always, do whatever you want to do. So long as your goal is to serve God and glorify God, do whatever you want to do. Yeah, He will work the plan out. Don't worry about it.
To that point, my number two is in Matthew, the third chapter and verse 9. This enters into this discussion somewhere. Matthew 3 and verse 9. This is John the Baptist speaking to the Pharisees and Sadducees. Matthew 3 and verse 9. Do not suppose you can say to yourselves, we have Abraham for our father. For I say to you that from these stones God is able to raise up children in Abraham. That belongs in this discussion somewhere. Because the point that John the Baptist is saying is that you guys think that just because Abraham's your father, that you're sitting there thinking that, well, what is God going to do? He already said this is going to happen, and the children of Abraham are going to be there, because he said children of Abraham are going to be blessed. And they're having this thinking that they've got named because God said this so long ago. And Abraham says, that's not right. God can bring up children to Abraham from these rocks if he wants to. So just because we don't conform to God's plan, don't think he can't accomplish it another way. That's really what John the Baptist is saying, John. That belongs in this discussion. And the last thing I wanted to say is, how many of us raising children have had that discussion with the children, with our kids, that, look, if you choose this, I can see what's going to happen. This is going to happen. It's not that hard to figure out. I know what the consequences are going to be. Sometimes those consequences are going to be administered by me. And sometimes they're just because of the natural social laws that are in place. You've seen it happen 100 times. You kind of know what's going to happen. Now, if I can figure that out, and if you all have had that experience, think how much more God can with perfect omniscience. How much better he is at that than us. Okay, that's all I can.
No, that's good. Number 2 and 3 are coming. We'll come back to both of those. Okay, so I want to move forward here because we're still with the problem of evil. What does God know? How do we understand this? I think Molinism is the answer to that. You don't have to. I think Molinism is the answer. But you still have a problem. At least for some people, this is a problem. And we're trying to address the problem in everybody's minds and everybody's questions. The problem is going to be called the evidential problem. I've read sometimes, I don't know why this is, but when people describe it, they describe sometimes the probabilistic problem of evil. I think it's the same thing. It's just different names, and I don't know why that is. I think gratuitous evil is the best way to describe this. And this is what the question is. We've done this up to this point. God wants love more than anything else. Love demands free will. Free will demands an option for evil. We should know that up to this point. Gratuitous evil, though, is, but why does it have to be so awful? And for seemingly no good reason at all. So if God had to, I don't have any problem with God had to create an option for evil in order to achieve love. I don't have a problem with that. I can potentially see somebody who has a problem with saying, okay, he had to open the door, there had to be the option for evil. But sometimes there's like evil 4.0 in our world. You know what I'm talking about? And it's like, did that have to happen? That's a part of the problem of evil. Does evil really need to be so horrible and seemingly pointless or gratuitous? What lesson is to be learned from this horrible, terrible thing that is to happen? Or what character is to be built from this whole thing? And so I didn't make these illustrations that I'm giving you, the yardstick. I didn't talk about with Molinism. There's always God is a card player and he has a deck of cards. He's playing his hand. There's standard illustrations that go along with each one of these. There are two standard illustrations that go along with this, and it's the Bambi and Sue illustration. So the natural evil explanation is Bambi. Let's say there's a forest fire, and there is a poor, sweet, cute, little innocent fawn in the woods, and it gets caught in the fire, and it gets maimed and suffers for days at a time until it finally dies. And you would look at that situation and you would be like, did we really have to do that? Bad things can happen, but did that one did he have to suffer for so long? That's the natural evil one. The Sue one is the moral evil one. And the Sue one, I don't want to say the Sue one. I will just leave it open to your imagination. But with Sue, what you do is you say, imagine a 5-year-old girl who's living in a house with her mom and her boyfriend, and the mom's boyfriend does every imaginable thing to this little girl. 5-year-old, innocent little girl. And that's where you're like, yeah, we live in a really bad world. This gratuitous evil would be like, what good? God works all things together for good. What possible good can come from that evil? You know what I'm saying? Like it's gratuitous. It's just like, it almost seems like it's going to go nuts. This is where you would put the hurricanes that kill hundreds of thousands of people and the various, what's the words I'm looking for? Where you go in and you kill an entire race of people or group. Genocide. The various genocides throughout history. Stalin's. You know what's, I almost said funny. That's not the right word. You know what's crazy about this one? When you get on and I'm like, hey, I need illustrations for this. Give me the people who have killed the most humans in history. And you come into Joseph Stalin, and the answer is, we don't even know how many millions of people he killed. And the gratuitous evil is like, okay, I understand that we need to have an option for evil, but that seems a little over the top for some people. What are you going to say to that? Because now we're moving a little farther away from the logical problem to the real heart problem. And this is going to be, this is going to be a question. If you might wrestle with this, but you're definitely going to have to answer it for someone else. What are you going to say about this part?
Satan's entire purpose is to bring sin into the world and prevent people from being saved. The farther he can make evil seen from God, the less evil, relatively, is more likely to be tolerated. And the less evil is still sin, and the less evil still brings condemnation. So if we're focused on how horrible this is on this end of the evil spectrum, the line can be blurred by Satan on the other end of the evil spectrum. And more is accepted and more are lost. That's just one thought.
Yeah. What I really like about your answer is to incorporate Satan into this equation. I think that's an important part of what we need to do here. I want to introduce you to another word. It's called skeptical theism. I don't care if you take the word. I don't care. I don't care if you ignore it. But using words like this makes it so that you can get on Google and say, I want to know more about what Ryan's talking about. Search for skeptical theism. Skeptical theism says, human knowledge is limited. Rob, we're going to get to one of your things that you said right now. Human knowledge is limited, and since we do not and we cannot see the whole picture, I should be skeptical about my ability to judge whether or not God has a morally sufficient reason for doing the thing that he allowed, for allowing the thing that he allowed. What possibly good thing can come from Sue's horrible situation? And skeptical theism says, I don't know, but God does. Now, this is not going to work for some people, but I want to go over to Job 38. We're going to spend a little bit of time in Job 38. Well, moving through Job 38 through 40. Lots of people have pointed to Job in this class already. Rightly so. Skeptical theism, one of the good illustrations, I think, within skeptical theism, you know what, I think I've got it up here for you. Oh, my inability to see a reason doesn't mean that there's not one. Maybe it's arrogance for me to say to God, how dare you? Nothing good can come from this. I'm not God, and I don't know the whole yardstick. But the bear in the trap illustration is one. Let's say that there's a hunter in the woods and he finds a bear in a trap. And he gets close and the bear's like, no, you're not coming close to me. I want to help you, bear. And so what do I got to do? I got to shoot the bear 4 times with tranquilizers. And the bear's like, why are you shooting me? And then the bear falls apart. But before I open the trap, I have to put more pressure on it first. And the bear's like, oh, you're hurting my hand. But the bear doesn't understand, I'm trying to get you out of the trap. It seems like this to you, but the bigger picture that you can't understand because you're a bear is that I'm trying to help you. That's one illustration that goes with this whole thing. There's pros and cons to it. Here's Job. At the end of Job, God's answer to Job, I think, is where we need to ultimately land. 38 verse 1, the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens counsel with words without knowledge? God says to Job, you're talking, but you don't know what you're talking about. You darken counsel without knowledge. Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you make it known to me. And so he's going to ask Job, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched a line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut in the sea with the doors? And he goes on. I gave you the breakdown here, all the way down to verse 38. He goes on to basically describe all of creation, the sun and the moon and the stars and the world. And it's like, hey, Job, you have all the answers to all of this stuff. Tell me the answers. And the implication is, you don't have all the answers. That's not even the implication. It's the very clearly stated truth. And then you come to verse 39. I love this. Starting in verse 39, I think we actually start to get into the problem of evil. Job 38:39. Can you hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lion when they crouch in their dens, or lie in wait in the thicket? How are you going to feed the lion? Well, the deer's going to have to die. Well, that's not fair to the deer, so what's the alternative? That the lion starves to death. Well, that's not fair to the lion. You know what I'm saying? That's what God is saying to Job here is, hey, you got all the answers, buddy. You make it work. Within this big open space of humans who have free will, you want to criticize me for all the bad things that are happening. Let's see you do better. That's what's happening in Job's in 39 and verse 1. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you observe the calving of the does? Can you number the mouths that they fulfill? Oh, the months that they fulfill? Do you know the time when they give birth? I mean, all of these different situations end ultimately in chapter 40 and verse 1. And the Lord said to Job, shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it. And, you can call it skeptical theism, or you can call it Job 38 through 40. But the point is still the same in what we're doing, and that is, I don't like what happens to Sue in our world at all. And I think we would all do this in this building. And we will do everything that we possibly can to make sure that it won't happen to Sue in this building. But skeptical theism says, at the end of the day, I need to be skeptical about my ability to judge God's moral goodness when I don't have all the information. Anything you want to say about that?
One, just the idea of ultimate judgment. I know you said we'll touch on that eventually, but that should bring comfort to us too, that within our finite minds of you have so many years on this planet, has nothing in comparison to eternal damnation. But then also with the unnecessary evil, I've had the flood brought up to me. Like, okay, in Egypt, all the firstborn, they just die. Someone just didn't wake up the next morning. But with the flood, did they really have to drown? Everyone literally had to, suffer under the water. And then thousands of years later, you're like, yeah, because it has to lead to baptism. And so that's a wild example of immense suffering of all of humanity except for one family, leading to a metaphor that's going to be used for the salvation of all of humanity. I talk about extremes.
Yeah, you're explaining to the bear. The bear says, that's not fair. And God says, you don't have any idea what's going to happen in 10,000 years that comes from this. Morgan?
I know this is obvious, but I just keep thinking that God is pointing to Jesus through all of
Yeah. Of gratuitous suffering.
The most gratuitous suffering. He never sinned. He wasn't like us. He actually, and he was God's son, so he suffered as a father.
Yeah.
And then he also endured it as the son. So he got it on both sides of the spectrum. So I think
Yeah.
that's the most obvious thing probably, but I just keep thinking that's what it's pointing to. And God allows us to suffer so that we can seek Him, because that's our ultimate goal. Good is being with Him, and then also He gives us the option to eliminate ultimate suffering. So we don't even know what ultimate suffering or ultimate evil truly is like. We're just getting a piece of what it's like here on earth, but in eternity it's probably a million X or a billion X or whatever,
Yeah.
multiplier you want to use.
I want to go forward with that last comment. If we have time, we can come back to this. But this same conversation, Rob, this is, I said, number 3. I would like to spend some time in Romans 9. I'm not sure that we will have time for that. Let me summarize it real quick for you. Israel was God's chosen people, but physical Israel is not God's chosen people today. The Lord's people through Jesus, the Lord's people are God's chosen people. And so Paul asks the question, so does that mean that God's word has failed? And he says, no. I can raise up rocks if I want. Not all who are descended from Israel are Israel. And he gives a couple examples of that. Like Esau. Esau was descended from Israel, and he's not Israel. You understand that in verse 14. So, if God knew ahead of time, even before they were born, that Jacob was going to be Israel and Esau was not, then does that mean that God is not just and God is not fair? That's verse 14. And the answer is, in that section, is no. He will be merciful to whom he is merciful, and not to whom he is not. And so then you come down to verse 19, which is the key, and it says, well, then how can we be held responsible for ourselves? How does responsibility fit in this whole thing? If God already determined that Esau is going to not be Israel before he was born, that's used in the text, before he was born, then how can you say that Esau is responsible for his decisions? And Paul says, will the clay criticize the potter? No. It's the same answer as Job. You don't know. You don't know. All of this fits inside of skeptical theism. We don't know. We're not God, and we don't have the whole picture. And a huge part of the problem of evil needs to be us saying, I'm not God, and I don't have the whole picture.
Going back to Job, the whole premise that Satan makes to God is, Job only does what you want because you're good to him. Try something else out and see how it works out. That's the premise, and that may be the only purpose. And you look at Cain and Abel. Cain didn't have to murder his brother. That was something he chose afterwards. You still have to take the responsibility for your part, your reaction. Edom didn't have to become an enemy to Israel just because Esau wasn't favored in a situation.
Yeah, that's my sermon tonight. It's going to be one of the most boring sermons I've ever preached, but I love it. No. What I'm saying is, I'm so glad that you made that great comment because I'm going to use it. Okay, so last thing on this conversation, Molinism. God is above the yardstick. He's laid things out. But then why do such horrible things still happen if God has laid things out? There's a German philosopher named Gottfried Leibniz who uses this word. This is the best of all possible worlds. Morgan, I'm coming back to your comment here. I don't know if this is right. I don't know if anybody can know if this is right or not. But here's what he says. God is all powerful. He can create any logically possible world. He can do that. We know that he can do that. He knows everything, so he knows every possible world in infinite detail, the openness and the branching of the tree. He knows the whole thing. This is my biggest takeaway. My picture of God is not nearly big enough to see that God knows every possible could and would. I need a much bigger picture of God. He's all good. I don't question this. He always chooses what is best and good. Working through the argument. There are infinitely many possible worlds because of free will. So you've got, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, and if I do, any of these options could come, and somewhere on this line is the real thing that happened. God can do any possible worlds. Among these, there must be one that is the best overall. So to Morgan's point, Morgan said, we don't even know the extent of evil. What Leibniz is going to say is, we criticize evil in this world, but what he's saying is, given what I know about God, this is the best possible one that could exist, the best possible of all worlds. A perfectly good God would choose the best possible way forward. I don't know if that's true or not. I would like for it to be true. With that, I'm finished with the logical I'm finished with the logical problem of evil. I wanted to be done in January, but we missed a class. So on Wednesday, what we're going to do is we're going to start to move through the Bible. We're going to move out of philosophy and explanation. And for February, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a list and we're going to say, what does the Bible say about why bad things happen? And there's a long list of different options that we have. And I think to Rick's point, Job never knew, to our knowledge, Job never knew what the reason was. But what I think it would be good to have in our tool belts is at least a list of options. Like, what does the Bible say? It could be this, it could be this, it could be this. I'm not going to be able to say, this right here is the reason why bad things are happening in my life, but we're going to at least go through the Bible and put some options out there. And that's going to help us as we move into March to say, okay, so what do we do with this list of options? So that's the way forward. We're going to go through the Bible and say, what does the Bible say about why bad things happen? Good? Any comments or questions? It looks like it's time to be done, but the kids are not here yet. So
Some of the things you got to take into consideration when you see evil in the world is the lack of God in the rest of the world. And when you have a lack of God, then the morality comes from within. And we know that man is evil. So when it comes to it, you take God out of the situation in our choices, then there is no morality in the actions that happen.
So you're describing evil as the privation of good, which was our first class on this whole thing, is you see it everywhere. It helps with thinking. Remember the first class? I'm done if you want to get up. Remember the first class, though, where I said, what are we doing with this class? We're just trying to get ahead of it. We're trying to think about things like this now. I want to think about who God is and what God is like now, and I want to think about evil and what it is and all of that in the world. I want to think about it now rather than waiting until I'm in the midst of a horrible situation and that be the first time that I start to ask questions. All that we're doing is we're just trying to think about it together. All right, thanks for your, I call it indulging me. Thanks for letting me do this class in January. February, I think, will be more fun.